Folks, and welcome. We are just waiting for a couple folks to connect with their audio at this point in time. We're excited to have you all here today. We're just waiting for a few more to join. We're going to have people joining periodically throughout the webinar as well today. So happy to have you all here, but in the point of respecting everyone's time, we do want to get started on time. So I'll start off by saying hello and welcome, and thank you for attending today. Today you are joining the DeGroote School of Business MBA program and the Admit Master to be able to support you in writing your GMAT of future. So I want to start off by first introducing myself. My name is Ryan Shute. I use the pronouns he and him. I am an MBA recruitment and admissions manager here at the DeGroote MBA program. I've been with the DeGroote School of Business for about 3 years now, working with the MBA program, and I'm excited to be here today and support you in accessing our program. I always want to start off by introducing our team a little bit. So those are the lovely people that will always be supporting you throughout your MBA journey as an applicant and anything prior to joining our program. So of course, we have Jen Dunk, our manager of MBA recruitment and admissions. We have our recruitment and admission managers there. Both Viviani and Maria are in the office here today with me. And then of course, Carrie and Jella there to support you throughout all of your application needs. Hanya and Emily are our admission officers who will support you as you're moving through the process of actually being reviewed. And then for those of you who are admitted to the program, you'll get a chance to meet Ravina, our onboarding officer, who supports you with all needs that have to do with having the chance to join the program itself. As we move and we begin our presentation here today, I do want to acknowledge the land that McMaster University sits on, as it is important. So I will read our land acknowledgement and give you a bit of an insight as to how the DeGroote School of Business is improving these relationships. First and foremost, McMaster University recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and the Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. So in this covenant, we are looking to make sure that we are taking what we need, leaving something in the dish, and always keeping the dish clean. At the DeGroote School of Business, we also want to make sure that we're supporting those in the Indigenous community and furthering their education and the opportunity and access that comes with that. That's why the Dean came forward with what is called the DeGroote School of Business Graduate Award for Indigenous Learners, a long title, but an important title that it identifies an ability for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students in Canada to have access to the MBA program with full cost of the tuition covered and up to $15,000 per year for living expenses. If you're an Indigenous student and you're interested in this award, please do reach out to us at mbainfo@mcmaster.ca, and we'd be happy to support you there. So a little bit of an understanding of the programs that you're coming to see today, and then we'll jump over to Admit Master so you can understand a bit more about how you'll get into them. I want to highlight for folks the two programs that you may be looking at. The first being our MBA, and our full-time MBA program is a 20-month program. It is more for drivers, individuals in their career who are moving forward and progressing, approximately 4 years of work experience, and really gives you the opportunity to push your career forward through one of our 7 specializations. Our MBA with Co-op is a 28-month program, so a little bit longer in length, but more for that new professional, someone who's a fresh graduate, maybe up to 3 years of work experience, and someone who's really looking to discover where it is their career is taking them. Within this program, you will complete 3 separate 4-month paid work terms. In that time, you'll have the opportunity to potentially work with 3 different industries or 3 different companies and gain some incredible insight as to how to network and advance your career. Those co-op work terms are importantly paid. So on average, our students are seeing an income of approximately $42,500 over all 3 terms. Now, I do want to just touch on our admission requirements as students may be looking to meet our final round of admissions. And I want to highlight that at DeGroote, we look at a holistic admissions approach. That means that we looked at all details of your application. We don't just zone in on one and say that's the only thing that we are looking for. When it comes to our competitive GPA, we're looking for about a B average. And then for the GMAT or GRE score, we're looking at a 550 approximately or a 308. Now, not attaining this score does not mean that you are not eligible for the program. In fact, we do want to make sure that students are applying with a holistic and well-rounded application as well. So if you feel as though your academic presentation or your GMAT or GRE presentation aren't as strong, you can always feel free to really boast your experience through your resume or the interviews that will be required or the references that you'll be providing as well. These are all different avenues that will give you the opportunity to present your best application. Now, as we are nearing the end of the fall 2023 recruitment cycle, I want to talk a bit about deadlines. So, of course, our round 3 deadline for fall 2023 is going to be tomorrow. So if you're on this webinar, likely that you won't make your application by then, but that's okay. For domestic candidates, there will be one more deadline available. That will be June 1st, 2023. If you are an international candidate and you're looking to apply to the program, you're likely looking for the fall 2024 entry point, and you can reach back out to us this summer as applications will be opening at the beginning of September. So as we finish up that, I do want to introduce our presenter here today. So we're very, very excited to have Sergey from AdmitMaster. Sergey is a great mind when it comes to all things GMAT, and we're excited to have them here today to teach us a little bit more. We'll have some different opportunities to interact and things like that. I'm going to give him a moment to share his screen here and anything else he may need. But folks, I'm so happy to have you here. So thank you for taking the time. And Sergey, I'll hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this warm introduction. And hi, everyone. And congratulations on your decision to be here. So please let me know in the chat. We're not going to do a poll today, but let me know in the chat where you actually stand in terms of your GMAT prep. A means I don't know anything, and F means I've already done my test. This is a multiple choice exam, right? So somewhere in the range. A means this is really my very, very first stab at the GMAT, and here you have options here as well. We're going to do a bit of questions here today since the GMAT is a standardized test. So let me know in the chat box where you stand. And what I want to do also is to show you a couple of questions, because the GMAT is a very practical exam, and it's not about reading a book about the GMAT. I love analogies. So I think that the GMAT could be compared to maybe some sort of a sport, or maybe like driving a car. So if you think about GMAT being a sport, it's a mental sport, it's a sport for your brain, then you can think of studying for the GMAT as like taking your brain to the gym. Now, I can read a book about how some people go to the gym, and of course, how fit will I be? Probably not very, right? But if I actually do it, I will develop the right skills. So let's actually do it. Let me show you a question. Here is a question. It's a question from the GMAT, question from one of the past exams. And here's what the question is like. And here are the answer choices. So give it some read, give it about 20 seconds or so to read this question. And then we'll go through a couple of different ways of approaching this question. So let me ask you a question. Does anybody know the answer to this question? Or do you feel like you need more time? Let me know in the chat box. I just want to know also about chat box works, because I love interaction. I don't want this to be a one-way lecture. Just type in the chat box. If you know the answer, just say yes or no. That's okay. It doesn't matter. There's no right and wrong answer. There's just, okay, no, okay, good. Okay, perfect. So there are a couple of ways to approach this question. One of the ways is what I like to call the work hard way. Most people would know this as the by the book way, or by the high school way. And here's what we can learn. Well, we're given a ratio, and the ratio is given in a most reduced form. So if we are given a ratio of 13 to 28, that means we have 13 times n pigs and 28 times n chickens. So that was where we started from. Then, of course, we add 15 pigs, and now we're going to have 13 plus n pigs. We still have 28 chickens, so now we're given a new ratio. It's 4/7. And then all we need to do is solve for n, make sure we don't make a mistake, be very careful. So about 3 minutes later, remember, we don't have a calculator. You're going to find n, and n is equal to 5. Then we can find the number of pigs, the number of chickens, and the total would actually be 205. The answer choice is B. So you might be wondering, well, okay, Sergey, well, wait a second. You gave us 30 seconds to do this question, and yet you're saying 3 minutes later, maybe we'll find n. Yeah, because on the GMAT, you don't want to work hard, you want to work smart, right? Anybody likes to work smart and not hard? Let me know. Just put it in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself. So let me show you what it's like to work smart. We like it to also call it the mastery way of approaching the question, as opposed to the high school or the by the book way. So I look at this question, and here's what I know. For every 13 pigs, we have 28 chickens. So that means anytime I have 13 pigs, I will have 28 chickens. When I add 13 more pigs, I'm going to have 28 more chickens. So what this means is that the number of pigs that I have must be a multiple of 13, because I can only add 13 pigs in order to add 28 chickens. I cannot add 1 pig, because then how many chickens do I need to add? The ratio is not going to hold. So what this means is that the total number of both pigs and chickens must be a multiple of 41, 13 plus 28. So I add 13 pigs, I must add 28 chickens. 13 and 28, 13 is a prime number, so they don't have any common factors except for 1. This is the lowest, the most reduced ratio, and that's how the GMAT will always give us the ratio. So this means that the original number of pigs and chickens must be divisible by 41. Oh, wait, this was actually the question. What was the original total number of pigs and chickens on this farm? Well, we have so many numbers in our universe that are multiples of 41, but this is a multiple choice exam, and the answer choices, they are pretty close. 200 to 220, obviously only one of them is divisible by 41. And 41 is almost 40, and 200 almost 40 times 5. So I just need to multiply this by 5. 41 times 5, 205. I'm done. And if you're wondering, can I do this in 30 seconds? Absolutely, I can. Absolutely, I can do this in my head. I don't need a calculator. Certainly not a calculator. I don't even need a pen and paper. Now, on some questions, you will be using pen and paper. That's okay. You are given actually something to write with on the test. So this is what we call a problem-solving question. And I love the name problem-solving, because most people, when they see a problem-solving question, will think they need to solve a problem. And that's what we did in high school. But did I solve a problem here? Not really. I just found an answer. The answer was right there. It was one of the five answer choices. And by the way, the GMAT doesn't ever make a mistake. They always have one right answer and 4 wrong answers. So let's not doubt the GMAT and check whether 205 actually works. That's the only one that can work. So thank you. I see your comments in the chat box. So that's great. I appreciate it. I wanted to show you, before we move on, first of all, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat box. We will do a couple more questions today. I also want to take a bit of time to give you a plan of how you can study for the GMAT, whether you can come and take our course or you can study completely by yourself. I still want to give you that framework of how you can get to your desired result in about, I would say, 2 to 6 months, depending on how you study, what resources you use. If you've heard any people studying for years, they just don't know what they're doing, honestly, or they get bad advice. Nobody needs more than 6 months to study for the GMAT, even if you want a very high score, even if you work full-time. And I'll show you exactly how. But I wanted to show you a verbal reasoning question, just again to give you a bit of a taste of what to expect on the GMAT. So here is a question from the verbal reasoning section. It is called critical reasoning. please give it a read. I'll give you about 30, 40 seconds. Okay. I'm not going to ask you whether you can actually answer this question yet. I know it's not an easy question, but I just want to ask you a simple question. Please let me know in the chat box, how many times did you read this passage in the 45 seconds that I've given you? Yeah, 3 times, 3 to 4 times. Yeah, that's very common. All right, and let me ask you this question. After reading it, let's say 3 or 4 times, on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your confidence of being able to answer this question? How much do you actually understand from this passage on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 means I know exactly what the passage is saying and exactly how to answer that question, and 0 means I'm completely lost. 5, okay, about a 5. Okay, so let me actually show you the answer choices. Most of you have read this at least 3 or 4 times, so I'm going to take it away. We don't really have time to read it multiple times. Let me show you the answer choices, and I'll give you a few seconds to pick an answer. Once you think you know what the answer is, please put it in the chat box. I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then we'll break this question down. All right, I love an answer with a question mark. Sometimes I see an answer with a question mark, sometimes I see just an answer, and sometimes I see an answer with like an exclamation. So most people chose C. Let's see if it is actually the right answer. Let's go back to the passage. Now, this is an argument. So in critical reasoning, you're usually dealing with arguments that involve an opinion and support for that opinion. That is usually what we call an argument. And this is an argument made by an ethicist. I don't know if you ever met a person by the profession of ethicist. It is somebody who studies ethics. You can think of this person as maybe a professor at the university who teaches ethics and does some research in ethics. So let me ask you a question. You're trying to get into a very good MBA program like DeGroote MBA. How much do you need to know about ethics? What do you think? Do you have to be an expert in ethics? No. You have to be ethical, I think. That's important if you're trying to get into a good business school, but you don't have to be an expert in ethics. So how is it that the GMAT can ask us questions about ethics even though maybe we haven't taken some ethics classes in the university? Well, it is because the GMAT is not about ethics. And this question is also not about ethics. It is about answering the question. It's very important that when you see a question, you answer the question being asked. So what was the question that was being asked? It was the statement above in boldface. So I'm sure you noticed that a part of this argument had bolded part or bolded words. So this statement plays which of the following roles? So that means we're not being asked for what is it saying. We're being asked, why is it there? What is it actually doing in the argument? What kind of a role does it play? Essentially, they're asking us for the structure of the argument and not the content of the argument. There's a big difference. So if I want to understand the content, I'm going to be focusing on words such as resist the desire or especially virtuous, the words that we don't need to understand. But if I want to focus on the structure, I'm going to be focusing on these keywords. And these are the words all of us can understand. The author begins by saying, somebody made a mistake. Obviously, what does the author think? What is the opposite of that, right? If I say, it would be a mistake to say that the weather today is bad. What do I believe? What's my opinion? The weather today is actually good, or at least not bad. So that's what we call an opinion, also known as a claim or a conclusion of an argument. Now, if I were to just give you an opinion, this is what we're going to be called an unsupported opinion or unsupported claim, because obviously what we need is a support. I need to tell you why I believe the weather today is not bad. So you don't just go around telling people they're wrong without actually backing up your opinion. So that's why the author obviously needs to back up the opinion. And what follows that first statement is actually the support. So all of these, for although it is true that blah, 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 that's what we call the evidence to the claim or the evidence to the conclusion. Okay, so what we just found out is that the author stated an opinion and then followed by the support, by the supporting evidence. So we already know the bolded part is a supporting evidence. But sometimes it's helpful to really understand what kind of evidence the author is using and how is the author supporting that claim. So let's focus on the first few keywords here in this bolded part. They say, for although it is true. So what do you think? Does the author agree or disagree with that piece of evidence? Because the author could use some examples, counterexamples, analogies, there are all kinds of different things, facts, opinions, somebody else's opinions, experts' opinions. There are many, many different types of evidence the author could possibly use. If you come to our course, we're actually going to teach you all of them so you can identify them very quickly. But here you would notice that the author is saying, for although it is true. So the author very clearly agrees with that opinion. Essentially, if you were to distance yourself from the subject matter of that passage and just focus on the structure, the author says this: here is what I believe. These people are wrong. I'm right. And even though I agree with this part, these people are still wrong because they probably misinterpreted it. So that was the structure. So now let's go to the answer choices. C was the most popular answer choice. Let's actually read C and see if it fits what we just did. C says it is a faulty claim. Wait a second. This question wasn't about the whole argument. It was about the part in bold. And we said that's a supporting evidence. So it's not a claim. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. And they also said, for although it is true. So how could we say it's faulty if they also said it's true? So definitely C doesn't fit within the argument. Or we can get rid of it. Let's keep going. Let's actually go down and then we'll come back up. So D says, it is according to the argument a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless false. What do you think? The author says, for although it is true, so is it false? No, it's not false. So we can get rid of D as well. E says, it reports an observation that the argument claims is false. I can stop right now. E is not the right answer. So I'm down to two answer choices, A and B. And of these two remaining answer choices, I really just have to look at one, because I have 5 multiple choice answers. I've already eliminated 3, so only A or B could be correct. So I could look at whichever one I think is easier, and if it's right, that's great. I'll pick that one. And if it's wrong, that's also great. I'll pick the other one. So let me be a little lazy. I just want to go with A, because A seems a little shorter. So A says it is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. Shorter means easier to understand, probably easier to analyze. So I'm going to focus on that. By the way, we're going to teach you the same thing in quant. If you take our course, we'll show you that sometimes you can start with what's easier and very quickly get to understanding what's harder. And many people do questions in a very linear fashion, but you don't have to. You can be very strategic about what you analyze first. So A says, it is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. That means the part in bold was the author's opinion. No, that's not true. The author's opinion was these people are wrong. The part in bold was one of the pieces of evidence that, by the way, the author did agree with, but it wasn't the author's opinion. So is A the right answer? No, it's not. So B is the right answer. And honestly, at this point, I don't care what it says. That's the only one that could still work, because everything else doesn't work. I've been teaching this question probably for about 7 years. And if you ask me what exactly this person is saying, what does it mean to be especially virtuous? I have no idea. And I don't need to, because this is not an ethics class, this is a GMAT class. So let me ask you a question then. And perhaps I want to actually, together, we can ask a question to people who make the test. Imagine we go to these people. By the way, we get invited to, so we are a test prep organization. We help people beat the test. And you might think that people who make the test really hate us. And that's actually not true. We belong to a very small group of test prep organizations, only about 10 organizations all across South and North America that get invited to go and visit the GMAT headquarters every year. And they share a lot of things with us, and we get the chance to meet the people like the CEO of the GMAT and talk to people who make questions and so on. By the way, they never give us real questions. That would be against the law, of course, against the rules, but they do share a lot of things with us. And so imagine you and I were to go to this conference and say, well, tell us, what should we tell our clients? What really separates 500 from 700? That seems like a big mystery. I'll say, oh, the answer is actually on our website, mba.com. Just most people don't find it. It's also in the official guide. Here's what the GMAT says. This is going to be a test that is very different from almost any other test you've ever done. Because most of the tests we've done, if you want to, let's say, do a test in business, you got to know some business. I remember I did a CFA at some point. Well, I got to know some finance. And I also got my project management professional at some point. Well, I got to know some project management, right? In fact, when I studied for PMP exam, there was a book that's called the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So I needed to gain some knowledge about project management. If I know nothing about project management, I can't succeed on that exam. Yet on the GMAT, they give us questions about ethics, geology, astronomy, and all kinds of other things, because we're not expected to know anything about any subject matter. Instead, we need to demonstrate what the GMAT calls higher order reasoning skills. And if you heard Ryan speaking about like what's important, he used the word skills several times. It's really all about having the right skill set, because you're coming from different backgrounds. And when you finish your MBA, you're going to go to all kinds of different backgrounds. When I did my MBA, I had some people go in mining, and some people go in consulting, some people go in education. I went into telecommunications. We all had the right skills, even though maybe different knowledge. So for the GMAT, you do need to have these skills. And this doesn't mean you need to know nothing, but what it does mean is that the things you need to know are all very basic. In fact, 90% of what you need to know is the stuff you learned in primary school and in your middle school, not even in high school. There's a very, very small, maybe like 2 or 3 questions on the whole test is the stuff that you've learned in the high school. Everything else is from middle school, like grades 5 to 8. So that means it's been a while ago, right? So for most of you, if you are considering an MBA program, that means that you already have your undergrad and maybe a couple of years of work experience. So the middle school was like maybe 8 to 10 years ago, maybe more. That means we need to remember it. We need to refresh it. And I'll tell you how to do that in a moment. So that's why this test is actually very difficult for many people. If you read some forums and if you read some inspirational stories about people studying for the GMAT, I remember I read a story recently how somebody was studying for 7 years, took 3 years of work to study for the GMAT, and finally got a score of 680. And honestly, when I was reading this, I needed a glass of wine and I really needed to cry. Because 7 years, 3 years of work studying for the GMAT, got 680. We have clients who work for consulting firms, 60, 70-hour work weeks, and they can get a 700 plus score in 4 or 5 months. So I'll tell you how you can do that. But one big misconception that we need to break if we want to succeed on the GMAT is that knowledge is power. Knowledge was power in the 20th century, 19th century, before we had Google. People who were highly educated, they knew things because they read lots of books. And then people who were not educated, they didn't have that knowledge, so they couldn't compete with people who are highly educated. But that's not longer the case, because if you want to know the name of some star constellation somewhere that was discovered by the Hubble telescope, all I need to do is just ask Google. And I don't even have to type. I just say, hey, Google, tell me. And the Google will tell me literally in the split of a second. So knowledge is no longer power. What is power right now is the skill. That's why when you're applying for a job, you'll very often hear, we need people with certain skills. In fact, every time you apply to a job, there is a section called skills. And rarely there will be a section called knowledge. In fact, I met the person just yesterday or the day before, and he had an engineering background and then became an IT developer. And I asked him whether he actually learned how to be an IT developer in his engineering program. And he said, actually, no. But I had the right skills. And when I was hired by the company, they trained me for 3 months how to be the IT developer. They taught me these computer languages, and then I was very successful. So they can teach you the knowledge, or you can Google it. But it's very hard to teach people the skills within a very short time. And again, I love analogies. So I'm going to give you one more analogy and then more analogies in the future as well, later on. If you want to learn how to swim, it's not enough to read a book on swimming. Let's just leave it at that. You got to jump into a pool. You actually have to do it. Maybe get some coaching. Maybe learn the right techniques. If you want to be really good, you got to learn some really good things that really work. Because remember, the GMAT is a competitive exam. If you do the same thing that everybody else does, you're going to get the same results. If you want to get competitive results, you got to do something different. And I'll show you how to do that. So even if we look at the structure of the test, there are 4 sections on the test. And often I do a lot of one-on-one consultations, by the way. And if you are interested, I'd love to chat with you one-on-one. You can go on our website, admitmaster.com, book a 20-minute consultation. You can even send me your resume and we can chat a little bit more about your goals. Why do you want to do an MBA? And I can give you some tips on how to study for the GMAT as well. Completely one-on-one. So usually I ask people, well, tell me, what do you know about the GMAT? What sections are there on the GMAT? And people say, I know there's math and English. That's what I know. And there's something else, but I don't really remember what that was, but I know there's math and English. And then I usually show them this. And I said, where do you see math? And where exactly do you see English? There's no math on the test. There's no English on the test. It's all about reasoning. It's reasoning with numbers. It's also reasoning without numbers. Thank you so much, Ryan. And there's reasoning section that integrates stuff with numbers and without the numbers. And there's also an essay that involves analyzing information. So it's really all about the skills, analytical skills and your reasoning skills. It's essentially about how you think, not what you know. And in quantitative reasoning section, you're going to have a couple question types: problem solving, data sufficiency. Problem solving is something we've already seen. Data sufficiency is a very interesting question type where you're given a problem and you don't need to find the answer. You just need to understand if it's possible to solve a problem. That's very managerial, right? If you're a manager, you're not doing all the work yourself. You're just figuring out if the work could be done, and then somebody else will do it. That's data sufficiency, unique to the GMAT and other tests managed by the GMAC. Verbal reasoning, 3 question types: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. By the way, this is not about testing how well you know English. Sentence correction is all about attention to detail. You do need to know some grammar rules, but it's not about knowing grammar. It is really about having the right attention to detail. That's what's being tested. Critical reasoning is about your ability to reason in a proper logical way, and reading comprehension is all about understanding the big picture. You're going to be given lots of facts, lots of data, and you need to understand what's really important. Now, if you're interested to dig a little bit more, I know today we just have an hour. We are offering refresher classes on both quant and verbal. On the quantitative section, we'll have a mass refresher class. The next class is going to be March 29th, but the GMAT verbal refresher is actually coming up this Wednesday. So if you go on our website, admitmaster.com, you will find a link right on the homepage, or if you go to the GMAT page, you'll see that as well, or the events page. The links are everywhere. GMAT verbal refresher class is where we're going to spend 2 hours just talking about the verbal section, and that's this Wednesday at 7 p.m. So these 2 sections, oh yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan. So these 2 sections are the sections that are also, well, not only they contribute the most to the timing of the test. The test is about 3 hours, 9 minutes, and these 2 sections, 3 hours, 7 minutes, and these 2 sections take up 2 hours, 7 minutes. Also, these sections contribute towards your total 200 to 800 score. And most importantly, these sections are the harder sections in the test because they are adaptive. And if you come to our class, we're going to explain to you exactly how the adaptive system works. I'll even show you a formula of exactly how the GMAT calculates the score. It's a pretty complicated formula, pretty scary. But the most important thing for us to understand is this. If you're getting the questions right, the next question is going to generally get harder. And if you're getting the questions wrong, the next question is generally going to get easier. So the only way to really get a very high score is to deal with a lot of hard questions. Something to look forward to, right? Bring them on. Give me all kinds of hard questions. Yeah, I know. I have a Master of Mathematics and a Bachelor of Physics. And I remember when I was taking particles physics class, I had a professor who was like really brutal. He knew his stuff really well, but I knew that if he's going to ask me a question about some particles that I don't really know anything about, then I'm definitely failing that test. So I was praying I'm going to get something about some easy particles. I was hoping to get an easy question. But on the GMAT, that's not going to work. You really have to deal with hard questions in order for you to do really well on a test. So then this begs the question, how do I prepare? So I want to spend the next 10, 15 minutes actually share with you the different ways to prepare and the different resources you can use, because I'm sure that that's on your mind. And I will use an analogy, and I'm actually going to use an example. I'll use an example of my own preparation, because when I started studying for the GMAT, I had no idea what to expect. So the very first thing I did is, at that time, there weren't even webinars. There was no such thing. I did my GMAT in 2002, before some of you were born. Can you believe that? So, but it was still a computer adaptive test at that time. It was just like today. And I've been teaching the GMAT for 14 years now. So, but the first experience with the GMAT was, I went on MBA.com. I'm like, what's the GMAT again? I said, oh, there's a practice test. I can actually try it out. Before I go for the real test and spend, $300 or whatever, I can just go and try it out. So I took my practice test. I realized the scores were between 200 and 800. And my first practice score was 650. So this was actually quite impressive. I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty good score for the first attempt, knowing nothing about the GMAT. It's approximately top 20, 25%. And then what I realized also is that I could go back and look at the questions I've done and kind of see where I went wrong. And I did. And what I realized for me, I kind of knew the different tricks, but what was missing is I didn't know what is an isosceles triangle. because I took math in a different language. So I'm like, what is that? I have to look it up. Obviously, I couldn't use the dictionary while I'm doing my exam. So I had to refresh some of my math, and it took me about a week. I took the next practice test a week later and got a score of 700. I said, okay, well, that's pretty good. 700 is a good score. I guess I'm ready to go for the real test. So I booked my test. It wasn't that hard at that time. And about a week later, I got a score of 750. So the whole process took me about 2 weeks. And here's my official score report, just to show you that everything's legit. And I'm showing this not to impress you, it impresses me. I think that's really cool, something to brag about, right? And all of our clients got score above me, right? One of our clients got 790. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's super impressive. You know, the student beat the teacher. So in case you're wondering, by the way, I'm sure you might be thinking at this point, well, of course, Sergey is a genius, but whatever, you know, I can't really do this. Let me bust a bit of a GMAT myth. I'm not a genius. And the reason why I did so well on the GMAT was in such a short time, I had the skills. Remember, this is a skills-based exam. This is not about knowledge. This is not about reading a book. This is not. I remember CFA took me, like level 1 took me 3 months studying nonstop. It was crazy because I had to read the book and memorize stuff from the book. But on the GMAT, there's not that much to memorize. I had the right skills. I was participating in math Olympiads, and that's why it was so easy for me. And then it actually took me quite a long time to learn how to teach others, because just because you can do well on the GMAT doesn't mean you can teach others how to do well, right? So sometimes when somebody says, oh, I'm going to help you, it's easy, you know, 700, 750, it doesn't necessarily mean they can teach you. It just means somebody else taught them. But being a student, being a teacher is a bit different. So it took me many years to actually learn how to become a really, really good teacher. And the reason why I really love this job, I'm very passionate about it. I had a corporate career for about 10 years, worked for a big telecommunications company, 60,000 people. At some point, I just quit my job and said, I love this. I'll make this my full-time career. And the reason why I got really lucky in school, this is my teacher, this is my math teacher. He was actually training me for math Olympiads. It was just, honestly, he was like the teacher from God, if you believe in God. He was really, really skilled at training kids how they can think differently. And as a result, I picked up a lot of things, and then I worked with some really amazing people. One of our instructors was actually used to work for a big American test prep company. It doesn't exist anymore, but it did exist at that time, back in early 2000s. He was named, it was the biggest GMAT prep company, biggest private GMAT prep company in the world at that time. And he was named the top GMAT instructor in the world for that company. So he trained me a lot on how to become a GMAT instructor. And as a result, what I realized is that, yeah, it took me years, but it doesn't have to take you years. Daria came to us at the beginning of the pandemic, and her practice score was terrible. Like terrible, 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 below 10%. So she got many, many questions wrong. And she said, look, I need a lot of help, but I don't have that much time. I need a score of 700 because I want to be a very competitive candidate. And it took us 3 months. She took our course for 6 weeks, and then she studied for 7 more weeks, because if you take our course, we're going to give you lots of resources. You're going to need to do lots of practice. It's not enough just to come to classes. You're going to practice a lot. There's a ton of homework, practice tests, mock exams. And then 3 months later, exactly 3 months later, 13 weeks, she took the test, she scored 700, and she applied to the business school. And I love how, well, she came back and said she wrote a review for us on Google. You can, if you Google us, you're going to see all sorts of reviews from our past clients. Somebody just got a score of 700. Somebody else just got 710. Another client just a week ago got 690. He only wanted 650. He got 690. So, and I love how she wrote here, I learned how to think differently. I learned how to think outside the box. I learned how to manage my time and stress. This is very important. This is stressful. This is a very fast-paced test. So you have to have the right psychology for this test as well. And she ultimately learned how to think like a CEO. And that's why she was successful. So then the question then becomes, okay, so how could you structure your studies in order to be successful in the test? Well, guess what? There are many different ways to prepare. And I'm going to use a couple of analogies. And the first analogy I'd like to use, an analogy of a corn maze. Imagine this. You're coming up to something unknown because you don't really know where to go, right? The GMAT is something you've never done before. And you're like, okay, there's so many routes I can take. And if you remember, maybe you were a child or you have some children in your family, they'll say, okay, I can go left and I can go right. And, I can try different things and enjoy the process a little bit. And eventually I'll find a way. Eventually, right? So we call this a trial and error approach. And the trial and error approach is what most people do when they study for the GMAT. They try a book, then they try a practice test, then they try a webinar, then they try to work with some private tutors, then maybe they try a course. And the trial and error is a really good approach if you're trying to do something that has never been done before. You have lots of time, you're trying to develop a light bulb, and you want to try 10,000 times, and eventually you're going to find, just like Thomas Edison said, 10,000 ways it didn't work, and then you're going to find a way for it to work. So if you're trying to invent a light bulb, that's good. But if your time is limited, and if you want to go for your MBA, and there's a big opportunity cost of not doing an MBA, right? Most people after doing an MBA are going to make about $30,000 to $50,000 more per year when they do the MBA. So every time you delay your MBA, as long as you're at the right age, you already have the right amount of work experience, every year delaying your MBA is going to cost you $30,000 to $50,000, potentially more. And when you're not studying for the GMAT, you can do other things. So that's why it's very important to stay focused. But we are creatures of habit, right? So we were told in college and high school that read a book, you're going to be good. I've done that a lot. In my university, I remember I had a physics exam, and I'm like, I got a week. I got to start reading a book, right? So what a lot of people do is they go pick up a book. So see, the interesting thing is that when a lot of people begin studying for the new exam, the very first question pops up in their mind is, what's a book to read? Because we've been trained to study with books. And I'm really glad that you came here actually today, and you're investing some time in actually learning some other ways as well. But what's interesting is that the books on the GMAT are written for a certain purpose. Let's just put it this way. There are official books, which are the only sources of real questions from past exams that are published by the GMAT. And that's essentially a question bank of past questions. This book does not teach you how to beat the test, obviously, because it's made by the people who make the test. So it's not their objective to help you beat it. But there are some books that are written by organizations that help you beat the test. And these are called strategy GMAT books. So you may have seen these books, or maybe these books, or maybe, maybe these books, Cracking the GMAT. But here's the thing. All of these books were written to be given out in the GMAT course. Let's say you come and take somebody else's GMAT course. So they'll give you a book. They'll say, okay, read this book, then come to class. In a class, we'll teach you the real stuff. But the book will give you nice background knowledge. And because many people study by just trying to read the book, memorize, the books are great for their own purpose. They're really great for giving you background knowledge, and they're really great for giving you questions from past exams if it's an official guide. But you don't need to stop, or you can't stop at just reading the book. You do have to do a lot of practice, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. And when you're practicing something, the thing is, most people don't like practicing because there is a really delayed gratification in practicing. Because when I'm reading a book, then I know I can instantly gain some knowledge. I finish reading a book, I'm like, I feel smarter already. But when I am doing practice, I would sometimes really struggle initially. Let me actually, I had a problem with my PowerPoint, so let me just open it again real quick. Here, hopefully it should work now. Guess I'm gonna have to restart my PowerPoint because it tells me that I cannot share my slides. So when you're practicing, it's important to keep a couple of things in mind. And the first thing to keep in mind is that as you are practicing, initially, you are not going to feel very comfortable. It's only with time that you will feel comfortable. And that's why when you're trying something new that you've never done before, it's very easy to get discouraged and demotivated. I will also lots of examples of people who, study a bit and then just say, oh, this is hard, this is not for me, I'm not going to do that. So it's very important that you set yourself up for success. And I actually was just about to show you a very interesting graph. So hopefully I can get this working right now. I'm not really sure what happened to my PowerPoint. I certainly will boot up another computer if that doesn't work out. But let me try that in just a moment. Hopefully I can get this working here on this computer. Yeah, it looks like I will. Just give me one quick second. Whenever we have technology, there are technology problems, right? But it's not about having problems, it's about being able to solve them quickly. So here we go. Let me know if you can see my screen. Just let me know in the chat box.
All good.
Okay, perfect. So here's an interesting graph that shows how people study for the test. About 7 million people a year will say, I'd love to do an MBA or I'd love to do masters. Sounds like a really great idea. Of these 7 million people will either buy a GMAT book or download the GMAT prep software or take a GMAT prep exam. Do you know how many people out of this 2 million will actually do a real test? 200,000 people, only 10%. So see how people are just falling off. So if you just simply staying consistent and motivated and committed to this process, you are already beating a lot of people. You're already pretty much in the top 10%. By just saying, I'm not going to give up, I will do this. And I'll show you exactly how not to give up. And of everybody who does do the test, only about 10-12% will get a score of 700 or more. So how do you actually do this? Let me give you a map. And I'm going to use an analogy because I love analogies. And the analogy I'm going to use is the analogy of driving a car. One of my friends owns the company, the biggest company in the GTA that rents out exotic sports cars. So Lamborghinis and Ferraris and everything else. So he takes people out to a racetrack. And then you can actually drive a Lamborghini to like 250 kilometers an hour. And when you want to do this, if you want to be that good at driving a car, do you think it's going to be enough to just read a book on driving? No. But it takes some time to get there, and there's a process to get there. That's why, for example, here in this province of Ontario, in order for you to get fully licensed to drive a car, you need to go through 3 steps. And these are exactly the same 3 steps you're going to take in studying for the GMAT. And by the way, guess what? These are the exact 3 steps that you can take if you want to learn any new skill or any new sport. These 3 steps were not invented by the Ministry of Transportation or AdmitMaster. People use them for thousands of years. Step number 1, you got to gain some knowledge. You got to know the rules of the game. If you want to learn how to drive a car, you got to know the rules. Green means go and red means stop. So if you want to do really well in the GMAT, then the first step you want to do is make sure you're comfortable with the theory, with the basics. What is a quadratic equation? What's the area of a trapezoid? What's prime factorization? What are the prime numbers between 0 and 50? What are the powers of 2? Some of the more basic things. What's a root? What's a square root? What's a square? What's an exponent? In fact, this is so basic. Most of us have learned this, or all of us have learned this in school. If you decide to come to our class, we are going to give you access to all of these resources for free. So you will be refreshing them in a very efficient, adaptive way. So this platform where you're just going to be doing lots of exercises in order for you to get really comfortable with all of these basics. That's why we always encourage you to, and we have early bird discounts to actually encourage you to come and register for our class at least a few weeks in advance. Ideally, maybe a month in advance. We have a course starting tomorrow. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend joining that course. But we have another course starting at the end of March, for example. So that would be a better idea, unless you've already been studying for the GMAT a lot. So that's step number 1. Know your rules, know your theory. Step number 2, remember when you learned how to drive a car, you didn't just give your mom and dad, just said, okay, well, I got my G1 license, give me the keys, I'm ready. No, they said, no, you got to go and learn how to do it. So you went through some skills-based training. And the skills-based training actually was teaching you how to do it, how to drive a car. I know green means go, but how do I actually go? And if you remember, I remember the first time I was behind the wheel, I was learning on a shift stick. And I'm like, okay, I get into a car and there's like 28 steps I need to take, right? I need to turn on the ignition and press this pedal and look at this mirror and, press this button. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. And what's the chance that when you're learning something new, you'll make a mistake? 100%, right? I'm not skilled yet, so I definitely will be making mistakes. That's why it was important to have somebody there saying, let me show you actually how to do it. And then as you are trying yourself, I'm going to first keep you safe. There's an extra brake pedal in the training cars, just in case you do something stupid. And let me give you some feedback because, we're going to spend a few weeks together. And by the end of these few weeks, you got to be pretty good. So let me actually train you and give you feedback. And then okay, do this, don't do this. Okay, let's try again. Okay, we're going to try some more. So that's what the training looks like. That's exactly how our GMAT training looks like. You come to a class, we'll say, okay, do this. Look at this question. See this keyword? Here's why it's there. What does it mean? We do a lot of, we've been trained by psychologists and by trainers, by people with bachelor, masters of education, people who do professional training to actually see how our brain works. And I've been doing this now for 14 years, to connect things in your mind with analogies, with different examples so that you can start seeing things you haven't seen before. And then finally, after the class, you're going to be so excited. Wow, I can finally do this question. I saw a question that will take me 10 minutes. I can do this now in 20 seconds. You need to make sure that skills stick. And in order for you to do this, you got to practice a lot. That's why to be fully licensed in this province, you need to then go and drive for 8 to 12 months. And then after that, actually take the full G license test. And if you've heard the phrase, practice makes perfect, anybody heard the phrase, practice makes perfect? That's not true. Practice, you may have heard practice makes permanent. I love this. Practice makes a habit. The more you practice something, the more it becomes your habit. If I practice something a lot, this becomes my habit. So please be careful about what habits you develop, whether they're good habits or bad habits. I'll give you an example. One of the habits we teach in our class is to always look at the answer choices before you do the math. Guess what? It takes so much time to break that habit. But if you have that habit, I remember we were in the last class at the end of 6 weeks, and I gave people a question in my class, and it was a difficult question. But if you look at the answer choice, you can literally do this question in 20 seconds. And everybody was sweating. And after 3 minutes, like, I still don't have the answer. I said, look at the answer choices. I said, oh my gosh, yes. And you did tell us to look at the answer choices, yet, and you did tell us that should be our habit. And yet we're still doing this because our bad habits are so ingrained. So it takes time to break them. And sometimes this habit is so deep that we need somebody to push us a little bit. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're the kind of person who is as excited about GMAT, or maybe at least as excited about taking your career to the next level, come and join us. We offer live classes. If you are in Toronto or in the GTA, you can actually take our class in person. And we have free parking. We're in Midtown Toronto, super convenient, close to the subway, close to the highway as well, Highway 401 and Yonge. You can also take our classes online. Our next class starts tomorrow, but if it's too soon for you, if you haven't been studying, I would suggest take a class in March. We have a couple of other instructors, really good one, teach the February class. I'm teaching the March class. Yes, perfect, Ryan. Thank you. So you can go on our website, admitmaster.com, and you can even go to admitmaster.com/offer, and you can see what's available. We do have some special offers, usually for people who come to our webinars. This is a program that's really end-to-end. One of the things that our clients love about this program, right? One of the students recently told us, this is the GMAT with humane approach. He says, I've investigated some other companies, and I go to these companies and I say, look, take our course, but if you miss a class, too bad. Or if you need a refresher, you got to pay again. Or if you need some extra coaching, well, it's $200 an hour, right? But with us, you can repeat the classes for free. There are unlimited office hours every week. You have any questions, you can come to a study group. It's really a very gentle way to prepare for the GMAT. We'll make you work hard, but we'll make it as little stressful as possible. And essentially, we're going to coach you until you're done. Most of our clients, We'll be taking a live course, but we do offer flexible self-study options as well. You can take the same course as online or in person, but in an on-demand format, where there'll be an instructor helping you along the way, meeting with you regularly, coaching you through the process, but you're watching video recordings. You save a bit of money, but you still have lots of support from the instructor. And there's also a GMAT Express self-study program where you just get access to all of our resources and just go through them, all of them by yourself. 67 modules, you will go through all topics, we teach you the strategies. Same that in class, but it's one way, right? Because you can't ask questions. So that's a GMAT Express, but it's super affordable. It's like a couple $100 and you can get ready. So ladies and gentlemen, the one thing I want to leave you with is your results do really depend on how you prep. Remember, 90% of people give up and don't even do the GMAT. And of the remaining 10% of people, an average score is around 560, which is an okay score, but not really going to help you get into a good program like the DeGroote MBA. But if you learn the skills, we had a client recently, he started from a score of low 300s. In 3 months, he got to 600. And he was terrible in math, terrible, but he learned the skills. And you're like, this is doable. And if you go on our website, admitmaster.com, or go on Google, but we have a couple locations in Toronto, find a location in Midtown on Yonge and Lawrence, and read reviews from our recent students, because that's where we teach our recent classes. And one of them, his name is Mike. He was really bad in math, and he shows you step by step how you could actually succeed. And he actually tells you, from my own experience, here's what you can do. Here are the things, the steps you need to take to actually do really well. And about a third of our students get scores of 700 or more in the GMAT. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with one thing. If you are really on that path of your journey when you are thinking of making a decision to do an MBA, I would suggest connect with people like Ryan and figure out if the MBA is the right step. And as soon as you know that it is, really commit to mastering these skills. MBA is a very demanding program. And if you want to succeed in MBA, you got to succeed on the GMAT. That's why the GMAT is a good predictor of how well you will do. So come and join us in our live classes. You're going to have a lot of fun, lots of support. Our students say, honestly, I don't know how I would do this without you. If you are just dipping your toes into the GMAT, come to our refresher classes. We have free classes twice a month. The next class is on Wednesday. You can register at admitmaster.com/offer. We partner a lot with the DeGroote MBA, so we have this software that you could use to actually evaluate your level. You can just go to degroote.trygmat.com, take a practice test. You get a full report of where you stand, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then if you'd like for us to review your exam, please get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to help. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure spending this time with you. This was very super fast. We usually in our classes we go a lot deeper because our classes are 4 hours long twice a week. But right now we've just spent an hour together, maybe a little bit less than that. So please connect. Let's chat one-on-one. Most importantly, please connect with Ryan and make sure that you talk about your profile and see how you can best apply to a DeGroote MBA program. If you have any questions, let me know. Ryan, thanks again for having me today.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. That was great. And what I just wanted to finish off with is companies such as Sergey's and AdmitMaster, they don't need to do sessions like this. And Sergey has been with us for over a year now, wanting to present these, and really we do trust him in preparing our students. So if you are interested in pursuing this further, please do reach out. The links for the website are there, and the practice test link is there as well. So feel free to connect on any of those avenues. We want to thank you for coming out to this session, likely over your lunch hour, so we appreciate that. If you have any questions for us at DeGroote, feel free to reach out anytime. mbainfo@mcmaster.ca, you know where to reach out to us. We will be happy to connect with you. And we just want to say thank you for attending here today. We do have a recording. We'll be able to send that out a little bit later on today, so keep an eye on your inbox for that. And thank you so much for attending, folks. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.